Hello everyone, Black Witch Diary here, Lucifer Witch of the Left Hand Path and Occult Educator. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to those new here. It is wonderful to have you here. Fun fact, less than 50% of my viewers on YouTube are subscribed to my channel. So if you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I post content now twice a week on things occult related in terms of demonolatry, witchcraft, and yeah, just my life on this path. So if this is of interest to you, please consider subscribing. So today's video I am going to be talking about a juicy topic, which is kind of how the left hand path has helped to liberate me from addiction. But before I go into that, my usual announcements. Let's go. What are they? Evil entities that fell from heaven to serve the devil, to tempt mankind into sin and depravity. Ancient gods and goddesses who were degraded into lower forms by Abrahamic religion in their attempt to sow fear so that they could maintain control. Or psychological concepts of the mind that reside in our shadows. Perhaps a combination of all three, or none of them. We don't really know what demons are, beyond an educated guess at least. But what we do know is what they can do. Whether it's through higher magic or lower magic, demons will empower us to make changes and alchemize parts of ourselves and give us access to their gnosis. From this we can lead a life that we can take pride in and also leave behind a legacy. In order to access these beings to this level, it takes a degree of training and skill. Training of the mind and the self, of one's psychic abilities such as clairvoyance and telepathy, and also overcoming our limitations and unhelpful beliefs. Through this hard work, we can open ourselves to the infernal current. This is the world I want to show you. I want to take you through a 6-month intensive process to show you the power that you have that you did not know that you possessed. As long as you show dedication and commitment, not only will you be fully equipped in your practice of demonolatry and lead an effective and powerful practice, but also feel completely renewed within yourself and empowered like never before. If you're not willing to show commitment and dedication and work hard, then this program is not for you. But if you are, consider booking in your free discovery call with me at blackmagicdiary.com to find out more about Initiation Infernale and whether it's the program for you. The power and strength that you seek is waiting for you. As I have mentioned in my previous few videos, I'm also doing group rituals every other Friday. So the next group ritual will be February the 7th, and it is going to be a ritual for kind of magnetism and charisma in terms of how we communicate, and this will be with King Payman. So if that sounds like it could benefit you and it suits your needs, consider booking a space. The link is in the description, or you can just head straight to my website and go to group rituals. I also have some new merch on my website as well. So there's actually a t-shirt with my face on it now. This wasn't my idea. Don't start calling me a narcissist because I am essentially selling a t-shirt with my face on it now. My partner Atius Dade created it, and yeah, I think he did an excellent job. And so yeah, that is now on my website if you for some reason want to wear my face. Yeah, I don't know, the concept's a bit weird for me, but the t-shirt itself it looks really cool. So yeah. He's also created some flags as well. So like ritual flags for to go above or on your altar, so go and check those out. And last announcement, my monthly membership for workshops. For January this month we did an introduction to the Tree of Life and Death, so you can now view that if you want to join the membership. Memberships are no longer on YouTube, they go directly via my website. However, if you do accidentally subscribe to my memberships via my YouTube, I can give you access to the website for a month for free, and that gives you a chance to switch over your subscription. So yeah, that is the end of my announcements. Let's get into today's topic. So it's no secret about my past. I've disclosed bits and pieces before about my history with addiction, my history with an eating disorder, and just everything that kind of falls under the addiction umbrella. So first of all, let's talk about, you know, what does it mean to be an addict? It is a term in which you self-identify. It's not an official diagnosis. If it is, if you were to get a diagnosis, like so on like my medical diagnostic history, it just says illicit substance abuse, and you know, my eating disorder and stuff. It doesn't say, you know, she is an addict. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think addict is like a medical term necessarily, even though addiction is recognized as a disease. But yeah, I self-identify as an addict, and I have attended 12-step fellowships to help me with these behaviours, and it has honestly saved my life. Now, this is a little bit, I wouldn't even describe it as controversial, but you know, it's probably the opinion of some that perhaps 12-step programs and the left-hand path absolutely do not mix, which is not true. And the reason for this is because there's a, you know, 12 steps is, you know, kind of inherently rooted in Christianity. The 12 steps were created by a Christian group. It wasn't just Bill W. If you know your 12-step history, you'll know that Bill W is the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and but you know, he was inspired by this group of Christians, right? So it is for this reason that many don't think that 12 steps and the left-hand path are compatible. Also because meetings are often held in churches, so yeah, I mean, it is kind of understandable as to, you know, you might think why, but also when you look at the 12 steps, there are aspects of it where you think, yeah, that's not a very left-hand path of you, particularly when it comes to maybe the first 3 steps. So for those that don't know, step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over X. In my fellowship that I attend, it's we admitted we were powerless over our addiction, our life became unmanageable. 2, came to believe in a higher power that could help restore us to sanity. And 3, turned our will and our lives over to the care of this God as we understood him. So from a left-hand path perspective, that seems, you know, quite Christian, right? But there is no requirement to follow any particular religion in 12-step fellowships, especially in this day and age. I have a friend called Ben Dean who founded Satanic Recovery in London, and that has now become a worldwide thing. It is online. I'm only aware of 1 physical meeting in London. I could be wrong, there could be more, but you know, that is a really awesome thing, and it just goes to show that 12 steps is compatible regardless of whatever path or religion that you follow. It's not an inherently religious thing. Yes, it did come from religion, but it's no longer inherently religious. You kind of got to think about the time in which it came about, right? It came about in the 1930s. The majority of people were Christian and attended church. But you know, if Christianity was the answer, people would have been cured from alcoholism simply from attending church, right? So I just want to go over my kind of interpretation of the first 3 steps and why I do think that they apply to the left-hand path. I don't think there's like a whole lot of kind of problems or contradictions when it comes to the rest of the steps, but I will skim over those anyway. But in terms of step 1, admitting we were powerless. Now, when it comes to the left-hand path, it's very kind of like not about victimizing yourself and stepping into your power, believing that you are essentially your own God and the kind of dictator of your reality in a way, right? But people massively misinterpret this because they seem to believe that this means like you're no longer acknowledging that you're human, and you are no longer acknowledging that, like, you seem to think you have entire control over reality and every single thing that happens to you. It's not the case. You have control over you in the sense of the decisions and the actions that you make. Now, this may seem contradictory to when it comes to powerlessness, right? When it comes to powerlessness, so people describe powerlessness as acting against your own will. You know, I hear it said a lot in meetings that I was doing things against my own will. I was doing things I didn't want to do. Now, this is a self-imposed prison. And self-imposed prisons are very, very difficult to get out of. But there's a whole lot of humility that is required to admit powerlessness. And I actually think that it's not anti-left-hand path or opposition or contradictory to the left-hand path at all to admit powerlessness over something, because through admitting your powerlessness is a temporary state, right? You kind of have to get there in order to claim your power back over something. So it's not a case of like, oh, I'm powerless and that's how like you live the rest of your life. No, you're no longer like, when you have, you know, time and recovery under your belt and you're doing work on yourself through the 12 steps, you gain that power back. It's about reclaiming your power, and that's exactly what the left-hand path is, reclaiming your power. So by admitting that what you are doing and the way you've been living your life isn't working for you and is fucking you up, like being so brutally honest with yourself, no longer being in denial, the illusions, you know, being completely dismantled in front of you. I can't think of anything more like sort of initiatory into the left-hand path than that, right? So that's step one. Step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, when it comes to a power greater than ourselves, that could be anything, right? There are atheists in 12-step fellowships that do not believe in any kind of spiritual being whatsoever, and they consider power greater than themselves as kind of, so a power greater than yourself. Let me give you an example. Like, and not greater as in like physically bigger or has actual greater power than you, but perhaps someone that is able to do something that you are not able to do. For example, if you have a dental problem, you can't fix this yourself. To fix a dental problem yourself might be insane, right? Because you're not trained or equipped to do so, and you could end up making it worse or injuring yourself. So a dentist could be considered as a power greater than yourself in that situation, because this dentist is equipped and trained to handle this problem that you're dealing with, right? So that's kind of how an atheist might view it. They might view like a larger group of people as a power greater than themselves, aka 12-step meetings, like they consider that to be a power greater than themselves, right? So there isn't like an attachment to any kind of God necessarily. Now, for me, a power greater than myself, like it's obvious, right? I could consider that to be any of the spirits I work with. I don't have one singular power greater than myself, right? But when it came to step two for me, the power greater than myself restoring me to sanity was me getting in touch with my true will, aka a higher self. Because, you know, I've explained this before in videos. You have your will and you have your true will. Your will is kind of like the wants on the surface, which are, you know, there are usually things underneath it, and it's usually clouded in shadow so that you can't really, like, your motives aren't even that clear, even for you, right? Your true will is kind of like, you could consider it like destiny. I don't really like that term, but it's like what is truly meant for you. Because the thing is, right, I don't need to turn over my will and my life to the care of an actual God, right? Because it was never my will, my true will, to ever use drugs in the first place. It was never my true will to starve myself. I was not born on this earth wanting to do that to myself. Nobody is. It's nobody's true will to hurt themselves. So that's what step three is for me. It's getting in touch with your true will. It's like, you know, it's not my will to use drugs. If I have some sort of like craving or obsession or compulsion to use drugs, that's not my true will. That's not what I really want to do. It could be my will on like a very surface level, like, yeah, this is what I want to do. But my true will is I need to resolve these feelings in a healthy way that isn't going to hurt me or anyone else around me. So step four And 5, this is like an inventory step, and I consider this to be basically just really intense kind of shadow work in a written form. A written and kind of shared form, because what you do is you write an inventory of you know, people that you resent, or like organizations or anything like that, your fears, your kind of sex conduct, how you've behaved sexually and romantically, and you know, your harms as well, how you've harmed other people. So this step, yeah, it's a real kind of look at kind of everything that's sort of happened to you throughout your life, like big events that have affected you. Like some people go like really anal with it, and they're like, yeah, so when I was 4, someone put chewing gum in my hair. I'm like, really? That like actually affected you on a core level? Like, no, it's shit. Like, you know, it's usually things with your parents, with significant relationships in your life, your romantic relationships, friendships, work relationships, like things that have significantly impacted you and still have power over you to this day. So the point in doing this inventory, so that these things no longer have power over you anymore. You're no longer sort of like bound to them. They're not affecting you emotionally. They're not keeping you up at night and boiling your piss. So yeah, this is just basically really intense sort of shadow work, and you look at your part in things. Now, it's not victim blaming before you go, well, what about if you were abused by someone and you resent them for it? Like, yeah, of course. The bit that is your part is thinking that anything was your fault, is thinking that, the bit that's your part is also the people that you choose. You can forgive yourself and be like, I just didn't know better. But it's also like, you need to note that that is your responsibility from now on, is to try to choose better partners. And how do you do that? Through working on yourself and valuing yourself enough so that you can be with someone that values you. So yeah, it's a whole thing. And then step 6 and 7, you kind of identify what they call defects of character. I prefer to call them defaults because it's what you default to, usually as a result of like a trauma response or something like that. And you're kind of working towards not necessarily the opposites of the defaults, but just kind of like not being ruled by your own trauma reactions, essentially. And I don't consider, so like things like let's say things like anger and fear, they can be considered as defects of character, whereas I'm sort of like, no, they're natural human emotions. Like, I've done like a lot of the reasons, not necessarily reasons, but what was underneath a lot of my addictions was repressed anger. I was never taught as a child how to, you know, I wasn't allowed to be angry at things. I wasn't allowed to express certain emotions. So when you repress these emotions, they, you know, they have to come out in another way. So if someone says, you know, yeah, one of my defects is anger, it might not be the same for me. Like, anger isn't a defect of mine. Anger is a gift today. To feel anger and to be able to express anger healthily and not take it out on myself is a gift. That is a gift of my recovery. So I suppose you could consider defects of character as kind of a subjective thing. Steps 8 and 9 is when you kind of make amends for things that you have done, you know, harms you have made. So, or harms you've done towards other people, towards, you know, if you've stolen from a company or like anything like that, right? And you correct sort of as best you can these wrongs. Like, a lot of people just see it as like, oh, you just apologize. No, it's not like that. It's a living amends. You are putting in your best effort not to repeat these actions. And for me, most of my amends, like, I've not found making amends to people difficult. It's been pretty straightforward for me. The biggest thing has been making amends to myself, and that is a left-hand path focus of mine as well. Like, how do I treat myself? You know, that's massive. Making amends to myself has always been very difficult, because I've always found it very difficult not to repeat behaviours and be like, why the fuck have I done this again? How am I here again? Etc, etc. And then 10, 11, 12 are sort of the maintenance steps. So 10 is kind of like you revisit doing inventory every now and then when something comes up and it bothers you. 11 is sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. Again, very left-hand path in the sense that, like, the idea is that you have a very regular practice with your concept of a higher power. And then 12 is carrying the message. Now, carrying the message to the still suffering addict, right? So this doesn't necessarily mean going to meetings and sharing about your experience. You carry the message to a still suffering addict by living your life clean. You carry the message through pretty much everything you do in life. I think there's this thing in 12-step meetings, just like, yeah, I need to go to a meeting to carry the message, or this is the only place I can carry a message. Like, no, absolutely not. You never know who you're going to come across in life, who you are going to be a living example. You don't even need to say anything. You don't even need to talk to someone directly to carry a message. So I've explained the 12 steps from my perspective. Now I want to kind of describe how this has blended into my left-hand path practice. I mean, I've already gone into that a little bit, but you know, how has the left-hand path kind of helped me? So I've been left-hand path for the last 6 years, and I was using through some of that time. Not granted, not a whole lot of that time, but you know, I'd say about 2 years out of that I was heavily addicted to drugs. And yeah, you know, came with what it came with. It really really messed me up. So you might be thinking, well, if you're already left-hand path and you know, you supposedly had like a level of like, you know, respect for yourself or whatever, why did you get back into drugs? Simple answer is that I'm an addict, and it's sort of what addicts do time to time. They relapse, and you know, the last time I you know, had a significant relapse, it lasted 2 years, and that was my 2 years out of the left-hand path. Before I was left-hand path, I did already have a history of drug abuse, but it was not as bad as those 2 years of my life. Those 2 years of my life were absolutely horrific. Borderline psychosis. I had, when I actually stopped using, I had to go and get like a test done on my heart and things like that. I was in an incredibly abusive relationship at the time, and yeah, life was unmanageable. It was horrendous. A difficult thing was that, you know, I was working, you know, I was doing my business, so, you know, I was running as, you know, Black Witch Diary, doing what I do now, and it was it was a thing, like walking into my ritual room after being on a bender and trying to sit down and work and just feeling eyes on me. And it wasn't necessarily like shaming eyes, it was like waiting. It was like waiting for the penny to fucking drop that I needed to do something about it. It was just eyes on me. I remember Belial and Astaroth in particular were very anti me doing this to myself, right? I mean, obviously. And I relied on them both, not relied, but you know, I went to them for a lot of guidance when I first decided to sort of get clean. And the thing is, getting clean was only the first stage. Like, my recovery and the process of it hasn't ended since getting clean, since getting a year clean, since getting 2 years clean. I am now almost 2 years and a month clean. And you know, the recovery hasn't stopped. It's still progressing. I've still relapsed into other addictions whilst I've been clean from drugs, namely my eating disorder. I was pretty vocal about that when I was doing the Goetia experiments video series, which I am going to continue, by the way, at some point. But yeah, you know, if you've watched it, you'll know that I got into bodybuilding, and it just completely enabled eating disorder behaviour, which is unfortunate. Because I was really passionate about it as well, but it was just one of those things. And you know, being left-hand path has helped me to work through those other addictions. It's taught me to, like, for instance, like, my eating disorder is a constant thing. With drugs, it's not so much, because once you put down the drugs, you're no longer exposed to them all the time. Like, yeah, you do get fleeting thoughts, and it's kind of like, oh, do you know what? Like, it would be really good just to have a bit of oblivion for a few hours and just get absolutely trashed. Like, that's what I crave. I don't crave getting high, I crave oblivion. That's what it is. It's pure escapism. It's an inability to deal with reality. It's when you're overwhelmed and you're just like, you know what, fuck it. And it can be like the littlest fucking thing that tips it off. Like, for me, the big things aren't a big deal. I don't feel like relapsing over the big stuff. It's usually like a few weeks after the big stuff happens, like if there's a crisis or something major, like emotional happens. It's usually a few weeks after I've stopped, like, I don't know, maybe like, because I suppose when I'm in crisis, I'm so focused on solution, or I'm focused on distracting myself from the crisis, that a few weeks later, when I'm still and I'm settled with myself, I'm like, oh my god, like, I want to fucking use. But anyway, back to the eating disorder. Like, the eating disorder is a constant fucking thing, right? Because food is a constant thing, your body is a constant thing, you look at your body all the time, and yeah, it's, for me, right, I've always been very controlling and protective over things that only I can control, that nobody else can, and those are two of those things, my body and my money. So those are the things that in my perception, which granted is an illusion, those are the two things that I have control over and nobody else can access if I don't want them to. So I do believe that my eating disorder is rooted in sexual abuse to a degree, because I was sexually abused when I was 12, and my eating disorder started to show at 13 or 14. So I do believe that it's a case of reclaiming control over your body. And I've also, in abusive relationships, been through financial abuse as well, where, you know, money's been taken from me, etc. So that's where that control comes from, right? So yeah, the eating disorder, the thoughts are coming most days, really. It really depends on like how I'm doing in myself. Yesterday was a little bit of a rough one. Since I went to Mexico and I stopped doing my prep for competing, I have gained weight, obviously, because I'm no longer deliberately trying to cut my body fat. I'm no longer eating ridiculously small portions a day and fuck all calories. And honestly, I'm not doing as much exercise as I used to. I'm not training every day. I ate loads of shit while I was in Mexico, and yeah, it is what it is. I have put on a little bit of weight and it is uncomfortable. Now, it's probably not a big deal to other people, because they're like, you don't look that much different. Like, yeah, you maybe put on a little bit of weight, but like, you look healthy, you look great. By the way, healthy is like the worst thing you can call an anorexic. I'm not saying don't call anorexic people healthy once they're in recovery. Like, it's not a bad thing to call someone healthy. Like, don't think it's one of those things like, oh, everyone's offended by everything now. So it's not a bad term, but for an anorexic, it's just like, oh my god, I look healthy. So yeah, yesterday was a difficult day. I had all these thoughts and I was like, yeah, do you know what, I think I might skip dinner, or like just these sort of like sneaky plans basically to, you know, try and avoid eating. And then I kind of sat down with Astaroth, and she didn't really need to say anything, and she was just like, you know better, and you know that you deserve to eat. You deserve to eat. So it's little things like that in the left-hand path that, like, you know, you get called out on your shit all the time, with, you know, your behaviour, what you're doing. But an important thing is that the denial in you has to be broken down enough for that those messages to get through. Because if you're in denial, you ain't getting shit. Those messages aren't coming through. So I think the left-hand path has been so important for me in terms of like getting off drugs, and it's so important for me to have like a solid concept of a higher power as well, because I see a lot of people in 12-step fellowships that don't have a solid concept of a higher power, and I'm like, I couldn't work like that. Like, I have to know what my higher power is. I can't imagine not being able to like telepathically communicate with the spirits that I work with and get direct guidance on things, right? Like, I can't have that blind faith shit. So yeah, like, it's left-hand path has benefited my recovery massively, because it's not just about getting clean, it's about the addictions that I still suffer with today, and it's a continuous process of liberating myself from just all of the shit that has, you know, been formed within me and kind of built me in my life, and kind of, you know, sort of taking things down and rebuilding them or rearranging things, and, you know, just constantly questioning myself and my thought patterns and my shadow. So it is a constant quest for that. The work is never done. So yeah, that is how the left-hand path has helped me in my recovery, and it's also made me basically refuse to be a victim in anything, and, you know, taking personal responsibility and accountability for my choices and how I live my life. So I'm going to leave this video here today, guys. I know it was a little bit rambly, like I can feel how fast I'm talking. I'm like blah 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 blah. So yeah, sorry if it was like a bit hard to keep up with, or I was taking ages to get to some of the points I was making, but you know, I have a lot to talk about when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, I hope this video was enjoyable. If you made it to the end of the video, leave a little black heart in the comments, because I know most of you don't watch my videos all the way through. You lazy, dopamine hungry fiends. Like, I can't talk, I've got ADHD, so yeah. If you've made it to the end of the video, leave a little heart. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.